Last week, the UK announced it will supply Ukraine with depleted uranium munitions for $1 million. Which of the following is true of depleted uranium? A. It poisons the land for decades to come. B. It causes cancer and kidney failure to those exposed. C. To use it indicates a terrible escalation. Or D. The depleted uranium from the UK is actually fair trade, organic, and patriotic.
The answer is obviously A, B, and C.
Those are no longer optional. When is it okay to blow up a network of offshore natural gas pipelines?
Wait, what happened to the last question?
A. When a successful Russian economy threatens U.S. hegemony. B. If we promise to clean it up with a wet, dry shop vac. C. On National Spaghetti Day. Or D. It depends on the air quality index.
I hate this show.
What's poppin', my friends, my family? We are back. Welcome to RBN Friday Live. It's great to be here. Great to be here. That was a great video. Actually, I want to get a shout out. Let me pull it back up. That's the person who made that video. They make a lot of banger videos. What's poppin', my friends, my family? Let me pull this back up again. This from Jimmy Dore's producer, Misha. Great video exposing Western hypocrisy. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, there was a bombshell, absolute bombshell yesterday of the Trump indictment. And it's very sad to see liberals pretend like this is like this big historic moment. I saw this conversation between Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell, and it was like hundreds of years from now, you're going to have students reading textbooks, and they're going to read about how Donald Trump paid off a porn star and he was the first president that was indicted. And I'm like, imagine being that delusional that you think people are going to be reading about Trump's relationship with a porn star. No, 100 years from now, they're going to be talking about how Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden destroyed U.S. unipolarity and dominance. They're going to be talking about the war crimes of people like Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, because it won't be the hero worship era over them anymore. Like, people would even tell the truth about Christopher Columbus now. So people think they're going to talk about this on the history books, the Trump indictment, which is boring. Like, that's the best y'all have of campaign finance mishap, which Hillary Clinton did as well. Don't you want to get Trump on something better than that? You would think, right? Now, that's the best they have. The most dangerous president of all time, but we're going to indict him on a payment to a porn star. They're not going to be talking about this in the history books. In the history books, they're going to be talking about the rise of China. They're going to be talking about how the American populace, how do you guys allow all these evil psychopaths in your government? Donald Trump is going to be a footnote among many of the psychopaths. The way we see it right now, you guys are like, oh man, I can't believe that we had a reality game show host as president. The same people who look up to Ronald Reagan, the actor. They look up to Ronald Reagan, they look down to Trump because he's not part of the club. So people in the future, they're going to look at this dude, Ronald Reagan, this fucking insane trickle-down economic preaching war hawk that waged war against the global south. And he was an actor. Look at Dick Cheney. They had this guy pretty much running the George W. Bush administration. You guys think they're going to hold back the way our establishment does on history? And you think they're going to talk about the Trump indictment? That is what liberals think is going to happen? Something that is extremely weak to get Trump on. Now, I do want to put back on the people who've been saying this. It's just a small disagreement when I see people say stuff like, man, Trump was indicted. It's really going to hurt the Trump administration. It's really going to hurt him. And then you have some people that say, oh, the Trump indictment, I'm going to just turn my camera off real quick. They say the Trump indictment is going to help Trump. And I disagree on both claims. A lot of people who support Trump and MAGA, they are seething they're coping because now we're gonna get the Trump mugshot or whatever. But they are tweeting out. They're all saying, "Oh, this is gonna guarantee Trump's reelection in 2024." And I think people are kind of blown out of proportion. To be honest, this is political theater. Do you guys really think the American people care one way or another about this? Strongly. Now you got Republicans. What this really did, this killed Ron DeSantis. It killed the chance of Republican primary because everyone coming out in support of Donald Trump on the right. You even had Ron DeSantis that came out like the ultimate cuck with a statement saying you won't arrest him in Florida. You had Mike Pence like an ultimate cuck on CNN saying this is atrocious. The stain on the democracy, defending Trump, the guy that's supposed to be his rival. So this killed the Republican primary. But who did not vote for Donald Trump in 2020 that's going to vote for him now because of this? All the people that was fired up over the culture wars in 2020 and people that was on board for Trump, they're going to vote for him again. This is not, to me, why I think is going to be the biggest influence on this election, this race. It's going to be Donald Trump's position on Ukraine. That's way more interesting, and that can be way more influential on getting people who are independent. I've already seen some independents that don't like Trump that said, "Man, I may vote for Trump just because of his war stance." Obviously, I disagree with that. We post-duopoly leftists here. I think Donald Trump is lying. I don't trust him on that, and that's shown by his appointments as president, the people he rubbed elbows with, people like Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and these swamp monsters. And even now, he's not really running away from the fact that you want to double down on this police state, that you want to escalate war with China. So I don't know why people necessarily believe the guy, but that's his rhetoric on Ukraine is way more influential and way more impactful in the race than the Trump indictment. The people who are all in for Trump, of course, they're riled up, but they're going to be riled up anyway. There are people riled up for Trump because of COVID, because of Biden and COVID, because of Biden and Ukraine, because Biden's just generally terrible. So I don't think it's going to be a needle mover in terms of deciding the race. Most apolitical people, they either like, oh yeah, they finally charged this motherfucker, or they like, oh whatever, this dude getting charged, whatever. Then no one run into this guy's defense. They're just fancy that MAGA people running with where there are people that don't pay attention to politics, apolitical people, like people in my family, and then Trump got indicted. Like, oh no, we got to cut down Trump's defense. No, we got bills to pay and shit. No ordinary people is not running Donald Trump's defense over this. That's why I put back. That's why there's nothing but political theater. That's why as Marxists, I look at this and I laugh because I take advantage of capitalist infighting. I think we should take advantage of that. But I'm going to show you guys this because this is an important point to make. And this is what Democrats and progressives are going to have a hard time to deal with, is the inherent hypocrisy. And the people I have no respect for are the people who vote for Joe Biden, vote for absolute war criminals, but they feel like they want to prosecute Putin for war crimes. They feel like they can indict Donald Trump while they supporting criminals. I'm going to show you guys who wasn't indicted by the United States. And this is something that we must call out. We must call this out because it's not whataboutism. What they are doing is propaganda of the highest order, weaponized propaganda, because they are using weaponized hypocrisy. So it'll be one thing if you're consistent down the line, because of the line that liberals are saying right now is that no one is above the law. No one's above the law. So that's why we went after Donald Trump over shit that Hillary Clinton did and many other politicians have done. But the reason why that's bullshit is because you guys look up to these people. Barack Obama has a Netflix show. George W. Bush is painting. Bill Clinton is free. Meanwhile, you guys are talking about we have a government that's maintaining the rule of law. MSNBC is like, man, this is a historic day for America because we are sending the message that no one is above the law. Meanwhile, look at these war criminals. Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton. Each one of these people individually is responsible for more death and destruction than the mob, than the Mexican cartels, than all the stuff that white America fears. I'm letting you guys know, those three people killed more than them, been more destabilizing than them. But tell me more about your rule of law when you got fucking Michelle Obama and George W. Bush being worshipped by liberal blue checks. He dancing with Ellen. Bill Clinton just walking around doing, giving public speeches as if he's not a war criminal. You got Hillary Clinton, who's a fucking teacher now, apparently. The person who's responsible for the slave state of Libya, the heist of Haiti, through the Hillary Clinton Foundation, responsible for and supporting every single war in the modern era, including Iraq, Afghanistan. But Hillary Clinton joins Columbia University as a professor and fellow in global affairs. That's some rules-based order for your ass. Now, this rank, disgusting hypocrisy is what makes the Trump indictment thing kind of disgusting. And that is what back up the claims and arguments that people on the right make, where they say this is weaponizing the Justice Department, which is 100% what it is. I'm not saying Trump is not guilty. I'm not saying that these people are not criminals. I'm not saying people cannot be held accountable. But what you guys doing is factually weaponizing the Justice Department to go after your enemies, the same thing you guys accuse Donald Trump is doing. Because if it wasn't that, you guys would be prosecuting, going after Hillary Clinton. You guys would be going after Bill Clinton. You guys would be going after Barack Obama. You guys would be going after John Bolton, who's a regular guest on CNN and MSNBC. But tell me more about how this is not political, how this is about saving democracy and showing people how certain people are now above the rule of law. Now I have something that's even more ridiculous to show you guys. The debate between Medhi Hassan and this Neocon. Go ahead, artist. This Neocon, who he's all for prosecuting Vladimir Putin for war crimes, right? But he's arguing against prosecuting George W. Bush for war crimes. So Medhi Hassan, a shitlib with 1,000 blind spots. And I'm going to explain to you guys some of these blind spots as we go through this debate. He actually does a decent segment where he's like he almost there. But he obviously not there because he's a propagandist. He's there to run the flexion for the Democratic Party because he's like, man, I am all for prosecuting and arresting Vladimir Putin for war crimes. But shouldn't we also arrest George W. Bush? Now, I will also pose, shouldn't we arrest Joe Biden? Benjamin Netanyahu? I think we agree on that one. But he's a big Biden bootlegger. But anyway, we get to that segment later. I'm kind of spoiling it. It's a very interesting, very telling debate from the mind of the rehabilitated liberal neocon. This guy who loved George W. Bush, got the invite on MSNBC. They even try to kind of clean his record up when they say, "Oh, he's an ex-Iraq neocon." He learned from his mistake. Clearly, he did not. But before we get to that segment, please like, share, and subscribe. I know you guys seen the suppression RBN been hit with. But with that said, we almost at let's see. What I don't even know where we at on subs. Let me look. I don't even know. What's our next milestone? I know we're trying to hit 50K. Oh, let me check real quick. I don't even. Yeah, right now we are at 32,300. I think we close to even 32,400. And that's despite the suppression. So please help us out. Share us, like, subscribe, support us on Patreon if you enjoy this content. Now, look what I said. Let me get to our next segment. I'm gonna show you guys this debate because this is very, very interesting. Here it is. Yeah, I'm gonna actually. I'll pull this receipt up. This is from not yet, not yet, not yet. This is from Garland Nixon here, friend of the show, calling out the hypocrisy because now the reason why I say I love that the ICC did this. I love the establishment went after Putin for war crimes because now this opened up this massive conversation that had to be had. What about George W. Bush, where Barack Obama famously said, "Oh, we just need to move on. We need to heal as a nation." Doing his job was to go in and to defend the Wall Street criminals, which he did by appointing Wall Street selected goon Eric Holder to defend the people who tanked the black economy, who tanked homeowners. The same way Barack Obama was chosen to defend Wall Street, he was there to defend the war criminal neocons in the George W. Bush administration, where he was like, "Oh, come on, let's chill out. Let's chill out. Let's move past it. Let's heal." Right? No, I thought this was supposed to be a country where no one is above the rule of law. This blatantly points out the hypocrisy in these anti-Trump, like these Jennifer Rubin types, right? These Michael Steele types, like these Republicans. They're like, "Oh, I hate Trump, but George W. Bush was back when Republican was great." This is just a great article from Truth Out. I'll just read this. For 20 years, Team Bush has escaped prosecution for their war crimes in Iraq. So, God forbid, people call for George W. Bush to be held accountable for your war crimes. Now you got all these people who never even used the word war crime, didn't even hear about imperialism, never talk about imperialism. All of a sudden, they want to talk about it regarding a territorial dispute between Russia and Ukraine. Now, let's get into this segment on Medhi here, because when I show you guys this segment, Medhi is a sellout of the highest order. He made his name being extremely critical of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, being critical of Israel, where he still raises tough questions on Israel, but he's definitely lightening his tone recently, right? But now he did a straight up MSNBC liberal Democratic shill of the highest order. And as I said earlier, he just had a thought. He's like, "Man, it'd be a good segment if I explore the fact that we should go after George W. Bush for war crimes the same way that we go after Vladimir Putin." This obviously ignored the fact that you guys support Joe Biden, who support multiple genocides, who exclaimed for World War III, who also support the Iraq war. So that's what I don't get. So Medhi Hassan, they say we should prosecute George W. Bush for the Iraq war, but what about the senators that was involved in lying about that as well? People don't know Joe Biden had a Senate commission. He had a commission that he had with Anthony Blinken as his advisor, where they had these sham trials to justify why we should invade Iraq. And he would stack these panels with a bunch of neocon weapon defense contractors, no anti-war voices. And then he did his sham trial and said, "Oh, after our conclusion, we found that we must go into Iraq." Joe Biden played a very critical role in that. He lies and said he was tricked by George Bush. He knew that they was lying, but no, he played a very crucial part in manufacturing consent for the war in the Senate. So I don't understand Medhi's position where you support going after George W. Bush, but you still like Joe Biden, who was just as complicit. But let's watch this debate. This is something else. I'll let it play.
Earlier this month, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for his role in the alleged abduction of Ukrainian children. While these represent the first official charges, it is far from the only war crime that Putin could and should be indicted for. I'm thinking about Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the invasion itself. Notably, these charges against Putin came the same week as the 20-year anniversary of America's illegal invasion of Iraq, which is interesting and kind of relevant because in a speech Vladimir Putin gave on the eve of his own illegal...
And for some reason, Medhi Hassan has nothing to say about Syria. Like, I gotta look, but I've never seen these segments on Syria. Joe Biden is illegally occupying and steering and stealing Syrian resources as we speak. But Medhi Hassan, he's not going to say anything about that. That's why he's deeply unimpressive to me. In fact, people who like him, who sell out, who make their name as a sort of progressive, anti-war journalist, and then get accepted by the establishment, and then run cover for neocons and war criminals of the Democratic Party and the establishment, they are about as disgusting as it gets. Because, yeah, okay, big boy, you calling out George W. Bush. Big deal. That's easy. That's easy. Are you going to call out Anthony Blinken? Are you going to call out Lloyd Austin? Are you going to call out Joe Biden and his complicity of the Iraq War? There is nothing brave about being a rank partisan. And I'm tired of people believing that's the case.
Invasion. He pointed to, quote, the invasion of Iraq without any legal grounds. They used the pretext of allegedly reliable information available in the United States about the presence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and all of that was a fake and a sham. Now, put aside Putin's bad faith and self-serving invocation of the Iraq war, the question still remains, if Putin should be prosecuted for his war crimes, then why shouldn't Bush as well?
Why shouldn't Biden?
I posed this question to former US Ambassador Michael McFaul on the 11th hour on MSNBC last week. Hold on, Vladimir Putin, rightly, there's a case against him.
Well, if you guys don't know who this guy is, look at the guy that Medhi Hassan brings on, and they like good friends. They always chum in with each other. This guy on the right is a psychopath who often called for nuclear war in World War III. He criticizes the United States for not doing enough. He be calling for like fucking direct bombings and retaliation against Russia, and he's like, man, Biden doing a good job, but we need to do more for Ukraine. This dude is a psychopath of the highest order. But of course he has a position. Look, this is what Medhi brings up to him.
Gets an arrest warrant for his illegal invasion of Ukraine, and yet George W. Bush is still swanning around painting paintings, swapping cough drops with Michelle Obama. What about that double standard?
I think the war in Europe today is categorically different. This is a war of imperialism. It's a war of annexation.
But the war of Iraq is not. The war of Syria is not, where they literally stealing the resources. Do you guys see why this guy is my enemy? Why this guy is as disgusting as it gets? This guy see brown people, Muslims. George W. Bush literally says it's like a religious war. He said, God told me to invade Iraq. This is a definition of a religious, imperialist, violent war that is responsible for millions of deaths, 2 million Iraqis dead, millions more displaced. But that's different. What we see in Europe and Ukraine is different. We're not going to war with those. It's not war with savages like Iraqis. These people are disgusting. You guys want to hear that part again?
Painting paintings, swapping cough drops with Michelle Obama. What about that double standard?
I think the war in Europe today is categorically different. This is a war of imperialism. It's a war of annexation. And I think it puts it in a different category.
How?
That exchange caught the attention of conservative writer and author Tom Nichols of The Atlantic. He took exception to what he felt was an unfair comparison between Ukraine and Iraq, tweeting, quote, the Russians are invading Ukraine to overthrow a democratic government and absorb Ukraine into a Russian empire. The allied coalition in Iraq deposed a tyrant who violated a ceasefire and then did everything it could to restore Iraq as an independent
what
state.
Historical revision?
To which I replied, the question, Tom, was about Bush and Putin. You can dress up Iraq as a liberal intervention all you like, but Bush violated international law, national sovereignty, and killed plus tortured.
So when Putin invades Ukraine, he does it because he's an evil maniac who wants to commit genocide against the Ukrainian people for no reason. But when the United States crosses an entire fucking ocean and invades Iraq, we did it with the goodness of our heart, with best intention. No, they invaded Iraq and immediately set up a police state where they would set up checkpoints. They kidnapped people, sent them to Guantanamo Bay. People was kidnapped and tortured innocent civilians because they did not tell the United States government what they wanted to hear. It's one of the greatest geopolitical crimes of the last century. When you look at the death and destruction, generations, they're going to feel this. People still feel this to this day. I dare one of these insane neocons to look at someone who's a victim of the Iraq war and tell them that their war and their suffering is inherently different than the blonde, blue-eyed Ukrainians. Look those people in the eye and tell them that. These people are disgusting. And they want me to think. People want me to think that Donald Trump is worse than these people. And look at the guy that Medhi's about to debate. This is unbelievable.
Whole bunch of innocent people. Of course, it spiraled from there, as so many Twitter spats do. But in my defense, I am far from the only one who thinks about Iraq when Ukraine comes up. Listen to this guy.
The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway.
That was, how does the saying go, the Freudian slip to end all Freudian slips.
One of my favorite stories ever.
I invited Tom Nichols to continue our Twitter beef, this time on TV, where the discourse is famously much more cordial. He joins me now. Tom was formerly a professor for the U.S. Naval War College and is currently staff writer for The Atlantic. He wrote this piece on the 20-year anniversary, acknowledging that he would no longer call it.
So I want you guys to understand, this guy writes for the fucking Atlantic. This guy he about to debate, Tom Nichols, who is crazier than that Ukraine op that we saw earlier. This guy is somehow crazier than him. But he got a spot on the Atlantic. And once you hear this guy's opinion, you guys are going to realize why we're the most propagandized country in the world. I have to go on YouTube. We got to go on Substack. Say Hirsch has to go on Substack. Meanwhile, people like this guy writes on the Atlantic. Now, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to let the video play so you guys can see how unbelievably unhinged this guy is.
Iraq a just war today, as he had at the time. Nevertheless, he still takes issue with my Ukraine-Iraq comparison, which we'll get into now. Tom, as always, thank you for coming on the show. The 20th anniversary of George Bush's illegal invasion of Iraq almost exactly coincided with that arrest warrant issued by the ICC for Vladimir Putin over Ukraine. So why is it wrong? Why is it invidious and inaccurate, as you say, to compare Ukraine with Iraq, to compare Vladimir Putin's crimes with George Bush's, as so many people around the world have been doing in recent days?
Well, Medhi, the way you phrase that is a classic and literal example of begging the question, because you've started with Bush's illegal invasion of Iraq. We're talking about an invasion that was accompanied by 3 other military powers and supported by 30 countries, including important American allies in Europe and other countries around the world. There's a difference. I mean, international law.
Bro, the argument that this man just used is that the invasion of Iraq is different because unlike Putin's invasion of Ukraine, there's a bunch of war criminals in the West. There's Tony Blair, the war criminal in the UK, war criminal in France, and people who are puppets of the United States empire. They supported the war in Iraq. So that's okay. So what they say is a group of white people say this is okay. Meanwhile, when Russians invade, that's not okay. That's literally the height of intellectual argument that you get from these people. Let's continue. Let's play that part again. I get the full answer.
Including American of Iraq. We're talking about an invasion that was accompanied by 3 other military powers and supported by 30 countries, including important American allies in Europe and other countries around the world. There's a difference. I mean, international law, I don't want us to devolve into what UN Security Council resolutions mean, but the Russians and the French and the Brits and the Americans disagreed about what Resolution 1441 really meant. That the Americans and the Brits said serious consequences mean serious consequences. It means military consequences.
So it's not a war crime
as
because we said
the
so.
giant raft of UN security resolutions that had been there for 12 years, including violating a ceasefire. If you violate a ceasefire and hostilities break out again, you don't get to claim that it's an illegal war. The thing I really took issue with here is I think it's not that it's an insult to Bush and the Americans. I mean, as you saw in my piece, I mean, I thought that deposing Saddam, even in the 1990s, on humanitarian grounds, particularly attempted genocide, was a just cause. But the way the Americans and their allies executed this was a complete fiasco. And I don't deny that now. Yeah. But I think by comparing them, you're letting Putin off the hook. You're simply drawing too easy a comparison to someone who did not actually approach the international community, did not have other allies, did not make a case at the United Nations, did none of those things and just said, Ukraine isn't a real place. These people will either accept my rule or die. And by comparing that to Iraq, I just think you're letting Putin off too easily.
Millions dead. 2.2 million dead in Iraq. Millions displaced. But somehow, even mentioning the fact that George W. Bush should be tried for war crimes, that lets Putin off the hook for some reason. How can you not hold these two thoughts at the same time? How can you not say we should try Putin for war crimes in Ukraine, and we should definitely try George W. Bush for what he did in Iraq? Well, I would add, because what George W. Bush did in Iraq is definitely worse. But you don't even have to say that. But the fact that he can't even say that is ridiculous. And Medhi actually comes back pretty well at him, so I'll let it continue.
So it's a good point you make. It's wrong, but it's a good point, because I think the person who's letting people off the hook is you. I've spent the last year on this show condemning Vladimir Putin from the very beginning and slamming people on the left and right who give him a pass.
Slamming people on the left, meaning people like us. When I say NATO left, who you guys think I'm talking about? I'm talking about this guy, Medhi Hassan. He is the prime time biggest example of what it means to be a NATO leftist. This guy made his name calling out the Iraq war, debunking the lies of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, calling out the lies of the Zionist and Israeli lobby. And this is what the progressives do all the time. They say, oh man, I see through the lies of Vietnam. I see through the lies of Iraq. Our government always lies for war. I read how war is a racket. I read Noam Chomsky manufacturing consent. And then the latest war come out. The new shit come out. The new shit come out, and they fall for the new shit. The people that they pat themselves on the back all the time talking about how they're a historian. Man, it's crazy. Man, they lie about Vietnam and what they did to Korea. Man, there was a genocide in Korea. Man, they lie. Government lies all the time, except this time. Mike Bolton is a war criminal. Mike Pompeo is a war criminal. All these people is a war criminal, except this time. I'm sure they have the best intentions of the Ukrainian people at heart. That's why Medhi Hassan, even though he cooks this guy, I will admit, as we watch it, you'll see, Medhi does cook this guy. But I am deeply unimpressed with these people that say, oh yeah, I see through Iraq, but you fall for the new shit. And don't get twisted. This guy is a rank propagandist because he's all in for Joe Biden. Love Joe Biden, right? All in for Joe Biden. Every argument that he makes toward George W. Bush right now applies to Joe Biden regarding the Iraq war and his current military activities, including Syria. But he's too much of a coward to make them. So I will admit, he cooks his boy in this debate, but do not be impressed by Medhi Hassan by any stretch of the imagination.
If anyone's being let off the hook, it's George W. Bush. The entire world is condemning Putin right now. It's Bush who, as I pointed out elsewhere, swapping cough drops, painting...
That's another lie. The entire world is not condemning Bush. The entire world is not condemning Putin. It's only the Western empire that's quickly losing geopolitical influence. You guys are condemning Putin. Now the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar is dying. What a flex, United States. Great job. But sorry, I let his full statement play. I'll keep interrupting. I let it play.
Slamming people on the left and right who give him a pass. If anyone's being let off the hook, it's George W. Bush. The entire world is condemning Putin right now. It's Bush who, as I pointed out elsewhere, swapping cough drops, painting paintings, getting rehabilitated. And I worry about this line from you that you can't compare the two because one is worse or one was done differently. And the analogy I keep thinking of, Tom, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe and Bob both commit a murder. Bob's murder is far more brutal and violent than Joe's murder. So Tom Nichols comes along and says, well, we should only prosecute Bob's murder, not Joe. Don't compare Joe's murder to Bob's. No, both are murders, both are violations of law. We can argue about which one's worse, but both deserve to be held to account.
Medhi just cooked this boy. Just cooked him with that analogy. But the same thing applies to the Democratic Party, Medhi. The same thing. And those blinders, it's glaring to me. I give him credit why I gotta let you guys know this dude's full of shit at the same time.
Well, in the words of Ronald Reagan, Medhi, there you go again, because you're saying both are murders. I would argue that one of them is not a war crime. An ill-advised war, yes.
What?
An incompetently executed war, Absolutely. But the idea that Bush said, I know that this cause is completely wrong. I know that these facts are wrong. I'm going to do it for, profit or personal revenge or whatever it is. Multiple investigations over 20 years and interviews with the people who were.
This man is a psychopath. George W. Bush said he was told by God to invade Iraq. That's a holy war, guys. God told him to invade a majority Muslim country, and then they went there and fucked shit up. As Stephanie Carroll said, I see you guys in the chat sometimes. 1 million Iraqis dead. The numbers are everywhere. I've seen 2.2 million. That's the number I've seen. I've seen numbers all over the place. I go with 2.2 million. Over 1 million more have been displaced. But that's not a war crime. I'm asking you guys, why do you guys think he has this ideology? This guy, whether he knows it or not, whether liberals knows it or not, this guy is a white supremacist. This guy is a unhinged warmonger. When he sees million dead Muslims and brown people, that's not a war crime. But blonde, blue-eyed people being killed is a war crime. That is subtle, deeply ingrained white supremacy, and these liberals don't even realize it. That's what I see. And Western chauvinism in its worst form. Jennifer Lee. According to this guy, one white death is worse than 1 million non-white deaths. And that is what liberals deeply believe. That is what these people deeply believe. That is what Jennifer Rubin deeply believes. The people at the Lincoln Project, that is what they deeply believe. Do not let anyone fool you think they are somehow better than Trump.
Were involved in the decision to go into this war just don't show that. And so you keep coming back to this is a war crime because you've defined it as a war crime, but the international community has not. But I think Bush has taken.
What? So he says, what you're saying, Medhi, you are saying George Bush did war crimes. I disagree. I don't think George Bush did war crimes in Iraq. A crazy claim. And then he said the reason why this is different because the global international community, which is made of war criminals, the global international Western community that literally live on a throne of lies and hypocrisy, they look the other way on George W. Bush, but they're calling out Putin. So that is enough. Our authority is enough. You don't believe your lying eyes. I know you think there are a lot of dead Iraqis there. But Boris Johnson said it's not. Emmanuel Macron said it's not. This is disgusting. How is this worse than Trump? I mean, how is Trump worse than this? I don't like Trump, but people pretend Trump is the worst thing ever. This guy is worse than Trump and all his MAGA acolytes. This guy is as insane as it is. Because as bad as Donald Trump is, Donald Trump talks about how horrible Iraq is. Donald Trump mentioned how George W. Bush should be tried for war crimes for Iraq. You know he said that? This guy disagrees to Trump's right. He's on Trump's right. Trump says we should prosecute Bush for war crimes. He says no. But liberals think this guy is better than Trump. Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough rather have this Republican than Donald Trump. Let's continue. I'm gonna let it play just a little bit more. I think I may lie on my points. I'll let it play just a little bit longer. I think I may lie on my points.
And plenty of arrows over 20 years, as he should. But I think part of the problem is that it just galls you that he hasn't been treated in the same category as Putin.
Oh, it does.
And while I understand
100% it galls me. 100% it galls me. And it's funny that you should mention. It's funny that you should mention Reagan. Another day we'll get you back on to talk about his war crimes in places like Guatemala and Lebanon elsewhere. But so let's stick with Bush because you keep saying
I'll be here. I'll defend any war criminal. I defend any war criminal. As long as you do crimes under the United States government, I'm all in. But people are afraid of Muslims? People are afraid of Mexicans. They want us to hate our neighbors when this guy is walking around. This guy is way more dangerous than any criminal or thug that you're afraid of. Way more gangster than any Mexican cartel member.
Look, Tom, you're a very smart man. You're a former professor at the Naval College. I believe you're a 5-time Jeopardy champion. But last time I checked, you have 0 legal qualifications. Most international lawyers who have commented on Iraq around the world, including the UN Secretary General at the time, Kofi Annan, said it was an illegal war. And I just want to pull up UN Resolution 1441, because you keep bringing up the UN. Let's just talk about UN Resolution 1441. Passed in November 2002, 4 months before the invasion. For our viewers, let's remind them, you point out rightly it gave Iraq one final opportunity, warned of serious consequences, but it also said the Security Council should remain seized of the matter. It didn't give permission to Bush and Blair to make war on Iraq. It didn't use the phrase all necessary means. And you don't have to take my word for it. I just want you to listen to the US and UK ambassadors at the UN at the time, the 2 guys who helped draft it. Have a listen.
This resolution contains no hidden triggers and no automaticity with respect to the use of force.
There is no automaticity in this resolution. If there is a further Iraqi breach of its disarmament obligations, the matter will return to the Council for discussion as required in operative paragraph 12.
No automaticity, no hidden triggers. We promised to come back to the Security Council, but they didn't. The majority of the Security Council rejected their view of 1441, and Kofi Annan called it an illegal war. A Dutch government inquiry called it an illegal war. The top law lords in the UK called it an illegal war, and yet George Bush has never been held legally to account for it.
Imagine how horrible you got to be cooked by Medhi Hassan. Medhi Hassan just cooked this man. Just cooked him. Called him out on his rank, unapologetic lie. This man went on corporate media in front of millions of people. Hundreds of thousands. Few thousands, right? And he told a lie like, yeah, George W. Bush invasion of Iraq is different than the invasion of Ukraine, because unlike the invasion of Ukraine, everyone in the West, all these organizations, they didn't really care about Iraq. What did I tell you guys? They are actively trying to rewrite the Iraq war and the war on terror. And that's why we need independent media. That's why I'm doing what I do. We need more truth tellers, because they're doing it in plain sight. Trying to pretend that George W. Bush is a cuddly, gentle soul who was misled, and there was a war that was waged by mistake. No, there was a malicious war that was built on lies. Lies. They are rewriting it, and this guy is trying it. He's trying to do it. Oh, the international community, other civil rights organizations, they wasn't that pissed off at the Iraq war. Straight up revisionism. And they will be successful if they win, because winners write the history books. And we don't fight this shit. Let's I'll let you see his response, and I'll wrap the segment up. He got caught for a lie.
First, I'll say, since we were appealing to authority here and that I have no legal bona fides, I will say I did write a whole book about this back in 2008.
No one gives a fuck about your book.
My big concern then as now is that the United States and other nations have now opened the door to preventive war as a means of statecraft, which I think is incredibly dangerous, and I think something that we don't talk enough about. But in terms of indicting George Bush, if someone wants to take it before the world court and indict George Bush, they should, then make the case, because I think what happened at the UN, and I agree with you, there was no automaticity. On the other hand, the Security Council had an understanding within itself that we would have a fair hearing on this if Iraq decided one more time not to comply. And I would argue that, with the exception of China, who basically backed out of this and said, Saddam's bringing this on himself. We don't want any part of it. We're not really going to participate in this debate. The French and the Russians said, bring it back to the Security Council, because you know that we will never agree to this. And the Brits and the Americans said, we'll bring it back to the Security Council because we're going to go after him once he defaults once again.
That doesn't make it legal.
I will agree.
That's great, but that doesn't make it legal.
You guys can watch the rest of this. Only 5 minutes left. I'll cut the segment there. Medhi calls him out for his unapologetic rank lies. And he panics and they said, well, actually, there was none but bunch of bullshit to cover for the fact that he lies and said that invasion of Iraq by George W. Bush is somehow different because George W. Bush had Western countries on this side. Look at the military deals that was made in Africa by Russia and South Africa, the expansion of BRICS, China expanding. China, one of the biggest geopolitical powers, soon to be the number one superpower in the world, friendly with Russia. Xi Jinping visited Putin. They said their relationship is stronger than ever. So using that guy's argument, hey, China not mad at Russia for their invasion of Ukraine. So doesn't that make the invasion of Ukraine okay based on that guy's logic? That guy's logic was the West is okay with the invasion of Iraq, so George W. Bush shouldn't be tried. So his view is deeply elitism. If it's our oligarchs, if it's our ruling class, they are above the rule of law, unless they pay a porn star off, right? What's poppin', my friends? Hope you guys enjoyed that first segment. I got a few more. I think I got a few more in me. Definitely want to get to the next one. I got a short little video I want to play because I got a bone to pick with people like Medhi Hassan who don't see through this Ukraine proxy war fraud. And where is Medhi Hassan on the Taiwan thing? So you are a critical thinker. You debunked the Iraq war lies. You debunked the lies of the Zionists in Israel. But you... nowhere to be found on Taiwan. Nowhere to be found on Ukraine. In fact, not only are you nowhere to be found, you actually are attacking people on the left and anti-war people who criticize the war in Ukraine. Anyway, let me read some super chats. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the $2, John. Thanks for the work. Nick Solo is A+. I miss Solo. I love doing Nick and CJ show. You guys can still catch that about 2 times a week. But I started off doing solo. It allows me to do all my stories uninterrupted, allow me to rant. I feel bad because sometimes I talk to them much, and CJ and JB, I know they just be sitting there like, man, I wish I could chime in right now. So solo's better, so I don't have to worry about leaving someone out of the conversation for too long. Nick at Night, always going to bring guests on there. Nick and Zoya, man, bro, Nick and Zoya, killing the game. Much love to Zoya's life. We got a lot of great shows coming up. I think we're going to do a survival panel. I think we're gonna do like a survival summit. Me and Zoya, we're gonna bring a lot of people on, talk about how to make your own food, how to craft stuff, strategies that the left need to engage in to survive late stage capitalism, why mutual aid is extremely important. So that's one thing we're gonna got planned. We got a lot of stuff planned. Hopefully you guys enjoy this content. Like, share, and subscribe if you do. Big shout out to my friend Left Foot, and thank you for $5. She's the person with the car parts. Much love. Another one for my friend Left Foot in. Thank you guys for the super chat. Nick and Night is fire. Friday at noon, Nick at noon. That's what we're doing today. All right, I'm gonna show you this video because this is what Medhi Hassan would not talk about on the show. This is what people from the NATO left, what they won't talk about, right? So this is the Ukraine war scam. And people like Bernie Sanders, people like Medhi Hassan, who apologize and do propaganda for this, all the members of the boutique left you guys see in media that defend this shit, right? They call anyone who tells the truth about NATO and the West and their imperialist ambitions, they call you a Putin puppet. They would never show you this on here, on your screen here. So this is Max Blumenthal explaining this video. He explains how the United States aid, and I've heard this multiple times, mostly come from neocons and conservatives, where they say, I don't know why you guys are really against the Ukraine war. Why are you guys really against unending Ukraine aid? We actually benefit from it. It actually go back to our weapon defense contractors. Like, they just straight up be saying that. So let's play the video. It's a long video. I don't want to play the whole thing.
It's been a year since Vladimir Putin launched his unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine. And in response, Europe has provided significant aid, but must continue to do more to keep the government of Ukraine from defaulting and ensure it's able to prosecute the war. Additionally, Congress has also provided a significant amount of assistance to Ukraine to ensure Putin's aggression is stopped at Ukraine's border and that a NATO ally is not next. I've supported U.S. assistance because a victory by Putin in Ukraine would further embolden Americans' adversaries, from Chairman Xi in Beijing to the Ayatollah in Tehran.
Okay, so what should the quote-unquote American adversaries do about the 800 military bases, I feel like the only country that has been emboldened to be aggressive is the United States. Maybe someone should do something about the United States. The United States have felt emboldened to invade countries because after George W. Bush invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, Barack Obama took his 2 wars and changed it to 7. So everything they say about Russia, the West is guilty of. And the West, they have been nothing but hostile to their enemies like Iran, Russia, and China. And then Iran, Russia, and China will respond, and then they say, how dare these people be aggressive and respond in anti-American ways. It's ridiculous and disgusting.
To Kim Jong-un in North Korea. However, it's imperative that the American people know about the existing accountability mechanisms, including third-party monitors such as Deloitte and the robust oversight being conducted by Congress, and in particular this committee. When Republicans took the majority, we made it very clear that accountability will be paramount to continued assistance in Ukraine. This is just the first of many hearings and briefings I will hold to ensure the assistance we are providing is being used as intended. Of the $113 billion appropriated across 4 supplementals, approximately 60% is going to American troops, American workers, and to modernizing American stockpiles. In fact, only 20% of the funding is going directly to the Ukrainian government in the form of direct budgetary assistance.
What?
As required by law, these funds are only dispersed to Ukraine following verification that the money is spent on approved items and activities. All funds are also subjected to external third-party monitoring by Deloitte. They are conducting randomized spot checks to verify the use of this assistance. Additionally, they are working with Ukraine's Ministry of Finance to review its monitoring, transparency, verification, and procedures. Today, we have the opportunity to question the independent inspectors generals from the Department of State, USAID, and the Department of Defense. This is the first time all 3 of you have appeared together before any committee to discuss your oversight role in the 64 planned and ongoing audits and reviews of U.S. assistance to Ukraine. Your work is a critical component to ensure that Congress is being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And it's necessary to prevent waste, fraud, or abuse, and if need be, invest.
So that's long enough to listen to him. I'm going to read Matt's tweet. And then I'm going to show you guys why what he's saying is bullshit. Where he's like, oh, man, we know exactly where the money is going. And he's like, man, 20% of the money goes to the Ukrainian government. It's weird for you to admit. Here, Max Blumenthal, he said, McCall say most U.S. aid to Ukraine get funneled back through the U.S. military-industrial complex. Of the $113 billion appropriated, approximately 60% is going to American troops, American workers, and on modernizing American stockpiles. Now you guys see why I'm so hard on the NATO left? Bernie Sanders and the NATO left is complicit with the military-industrial complex boom. And this is the guy making the argument, because he's making the argument on why we should support Ukraine. And he's speaking amongst his peers who are all war criminals. They are all people who profit from war. And he's like, man, why are you guys even critical of this? We're making a fortune on this, man. Don't you know this is a hustle? You know how much money that we are making, that we will get through our campaigns through this? But the progressive left has no criticism of this. No criticism of this whatsoever. So that's what I wanted to quickly cover. The last segment I want to do today before I wrap up, I know we got quite a few more programs. I think CJ going live today as well. So we don't ask Nick and CJ, but we get Nick and then CJ. You know what I mean? So I want to talk about Taiwan, right? Because Taiwan is something that NATO left don't like to talk about because it exposes the insane ideology of the Biden administration. And it's something that you would think that independent media will want to correct people on, because you got a lot of people that believe that Taiwan is like some sort of independent country. No, Taiwan is part of China. It is something that we acknowledge as part of China. And I want to talk about United States strategy on Taiwan and why these neocons are ridiculous when they say China is being exploratory. You have Kevin McCarthy, who's scheduled. Let me pull that up. Yeah, Kevin McCarthy has scheduled to visit Taiwan as well. Let me pull that up. So, showing how we are truly a uniparty, the same way that Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, Kevin McCarthy was like, I want to do the same thing Nancy Pelosi did. And you notice, by the way, the same people like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, who had criticisms of Kevin McCarthy because they wanted him to be different than standard leaders, and they have criticism of him over Ukraine. They have no criticism over his Taiwan escalations, which is a direct insult in violation of Chinese territorial sovereignty and violates longtime United States policy that even the UN and many countries acknowledge. And this is what they do not tell you. And one of the reasons why I know MSNBC and the NATO left commits propaganda against Taiwan, because they do not tell you in their statements that the United States acknowledges Taiwan as a part of China, as the United States policy. You guys understand? So they go on and say, oh my God, China may invade Taiwan. Yeah, we got the right to go to Taiwan. How dare China? No, we are invading China's sovereignty. And this is on purpose because the United States is playing a game that the NATO left and the media goes along with. It's called strategic ambiguity. The strategy is, yes, we officially acknowledge Taiwan as part of China as official United States policy, as we have done since the 1970s. So it's on the book that we acknowledge Taiwan as China. So, China can't bitch. But despite that, we're going to pretend and act as if Taiwan is an independent country and that China is under siege. Taiwan is under siege by China. That is their strategy. Saying one thing and saying that Taiwan is independent. Meanwhile, their official on-the-book strategy is we're going to undermine China's sovereignty on Taiwan. So I'll just read this paragraph because this is one of the few times you see corporate media actually tell the truth about Taiwan, and they do it in a very unhinged manner. Because the argument that this article is making is that, hell, we should just screw ambiguity. Fuck saying that, fuck having the one China thing on the books. Fuck recognizing that that Taiwan is part of China on the books. We should just go full-fledged. We will go to war with China over Taiwan. We should full-fledged violate China's sovereignty. You guys see the argument? This is the argument that this article makes. And they don't even understand they're saying the quiet part out loud. Now, I'm going to get to this part here. And they first explains that for a small place, Taiwan get a lot of attention. And he's talking about how this is such an important thing because you got separatist movements in Taiwan. The United States is supporting them. Look at this. I'll start from here. That is diplomatic lingo for avoiding any appearance that the United States is cozying up to Taiwan. But don't worry and don't overreact, according to the White House. Maybe it is time to worry a little. China will interpret anything related to Taiwan as provocative. So my question is, why wouldn't they? Imagine if China sent people to Texas to support the Texas separatist movement. There are people who freaked out over a goddamn Chinese balloon. But the United States sending the Speaker of the House, the third in line to the presidency, to Taiwan to legitimize the separatist movement is, they're like, oh man, why they view that as provocative? They will interpret it as a provocative, right? And it's especially if there are former meetings with the House Speaker in Taiwan. Some argue that it destabilized the entire region. But you can be forgiven for wondering whether Taiwan is its own country, where our allegiances lie, and why it's so hard to figure out the China-Taiwan puzzle. It is complicated. It is not complicated. Whenever you hear the empire and their puppets, their stenographers, whenever they say shit is complicated, it's generally not. For example, you hear people say this all the time. They say, oh my God, the Israel-Palestine conflict, it is so complicated. It's a history of complicated drama and conflict. No, it's not. Israel-Palestine is settler colonialism. That's Palestine, the West facilitated Palestine being ethnically purged and their lands being stolen by Israeli settlers. It is not a complicated issue. You should support the one-state solution because obviously it makes sense to have one state where everyone has civil rights under the law instead of a two-state solution where people's rights are vague. There's a social hierarchy. How does that even make sense to advocate for such a thing? So it's not a complicated position. The same way Taiwan is not complicated. China lost Taiwan because of Japanese imperialism. And now, because of long-time separatist movements in Taiwan that the United States mostly propped up by the CIA, they then got into that country and said, oh my God, China is violating Taiwan sovereignty. Even though the United States have acknowledged Taiwan as part of China since 1970s as a way to establish and normalize diplomatic relations between the countries. So it's not a complicated puzzle. It's the corporate media in the United States government lies about it all the time. So, and then they even acknowledge it. They even acknowledge that if you read The Hill, if you watch MSNBC, you most likely will be misled about this issue. Look at what they say here. They say, but you can be forgiven for wondering whether Taiwan is its own country. Why do you think so many people are misled by this? Because the people like The Hill and corporate media, for the most part, omit the fact that Taiwan is part of China. Most Americans probably think Taiwan is as far away as Ukraine is as the United States. You guys know Taiwan is closer to China, like 3 times closer to China than Hawaii is to the United States. There's more claims that the Hawaiian separatists have than the Taiwanese separatists have. There has been no cultural connection between the mainland of the United States and the Hawaiian people. They had their own indigenous tribes and indigenous culture for hundreds of years before they were colonized by the West. Taiwan and China has historical connections that go back hundreds of years. The same way that Ukraine and Russia has historical connections that go back hundreds of years, right? But the West completely whitewashes that. You got people like Matt Dessa said Ukraine and Russia have no cultural connection, which is a rank lie. There's no other way to say it. But anyway, let me finish this part up. Many nations, including the United States, recognize Taiwan unofficially. So this is the part where they actually tell the truth. They recognize Taiwan unofficially in order to provocate China. But then they continue, but we respect what is known as the one China policy. So you see how they explain it, like the way you explain like math to a child? Because this is like one of the few times The Hill is talking about this to their audience. So they got to start at the super basic part. They're like, hey, I know we don't talk about this often. I know CNN doesn't tell you this. I know MSNBC and Fox News doesn't tell you this. But we actually respect what is known as a one China policy. And then they said that means we deal extensively with Taiwan on issues across the board, even though China says Taiwan belongs to China. China argues that it has one country with 2 systems. What do you mean China argues that it has one country with 2 systems? You would think China would know that. They say, oh my God, China has a theory about how their country works. That's like China or someone saying the United States have a theory that there are 50 states. Oh my God, there's a theory that there's a judicial system. There's a theory that there are 3 branches of government. What do you mean there's a theory? China allows Taiwan independence. That does not separate the fact that Taiwan is a part of China. Period. So this is one of the few articles where they actually talk about this. And this is actually coming from a neocon point of view. Because they're arguing that China has been unreasonable, that we have this policy where we unofficially acknowledge Taiwan, even though our policy contradicts that. Isn't that lying? Isn't that something that would make a country upset? So this is the truth about the Taiwan policy that they don't usually tell you about. How the United States 100% on every single angle, every single thing about the story. They are provoking China. China is responding to these direct threats to Chinese sovereignty. Now you got corporate media writing stories like this. China's threatened to retaliate in McCarthy visits. Now, despite the fear-mongering, this is because China, their response was weak. The United States, like they do all the time, called China on their bluff. They said, they literally telegraphed going to Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan months in advance. And then China's like, please don't do this. If you guys do this, it would be a direct slap to our face, embarrassment to us on the global stage. If you guys do this, we must respond. We will respond forcibly if you do this. Please do not do this, you crazy motherfuckers. And then the United States was like, you ain't gonna do shit. You ain't gonna do shit, you pussy. I dare you. Yeah, we are sending Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. In fact, I might go myself. I bet you're not gonna do anything. I dare you. You ain't gonna do shit. You ain't gonna do shit. And then Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, and then China proceeded not to do shit. China was like, we're gonna show the United States. And then China did fucking military drills. Which, I'm not trying to laugh at China. They had no other option. China is looking out for the global working class. A war between China and the United States would destroy the global working class. So China, like Russia and Iran and multiple enemies of the United States have done multiple times. They've been strategy of Nicolas Maduro, not engaged with the provocation. They back down. And the result of them backing down is this. China said, okay, you guys didn't jump the first time. Now we're about to send Kevin McCarthy. We're going to keep violating your sovereignty. We're going to keep sending weapons to Taiwan. That's what Biden's doing now. That what progressives all for. AOC and progressives all vote for it. So, point being, the United States is lying about the Taiwanese policy. And if you're on the left, you don't have any criticism of the United States' direction on this, their direct attacks and provocation against the Chinese people, or just negotiating peace with Iran, Saudi Arabia, forgiving debts in Africa, and generally trying to create peace and stability in the world. That's extremely suspect. The same way extremely suspect the people who vote for Joe Biden, who do nothing but call out Vladimir Putin and China all day. The people who want fearmonger over the Chinese Communist Party, like some progressive candidates do. But anyway, I think that's our hour. Hopefully you guys enjoy these solo streams. Sometimes I got a few stories I gotta get to that I didn't have a chance to get to on our RBN Lives and Nick and CJ show. So I might drop in and do solo streams for an hour or so every once in a while. Let me know in the chat if you enjoy these programs so I can know if I can continue them. Also, any support via Patreon, via our Venmo, Revolutionary Blackout, our Substack, all that stuff is appreciated because it help us pay our labor. We're all about paying our fair labor value for everyone here. So that's what that's for, and that's help us keep going. So much love, much appreciation. Please subscribe. Make sure you check if you subscribe if you haven't. Much love, my fam. Have a good weekend.